I was never meant for digging graves. My hands were better suited to smaller, finer work. Buttons, brass fittings, maybe the inner workings of a pocket watch. But London does not concern herself with what a man's hands were meant for. She takes and breaks and swallows the rest. When my brother died of fever and my mother followed only a week later, there was no one left to keep me alive but myself. Now I work by night, digging up the freshly dead and selling them to a doctor who pays by the pound. So I dug. At first it was honest work, or at least honest enough for East London. I assisted old Curtis, the groundskeeper at St. Jude's Cemetery on the edge of Whitechapel, where the fog clung low and the soil was always damp. I dug fresh plots for the poor, filled in sunken graves, and hauled stone markers for the nameless. It was back-breaking work, but better than starving. Still, I began to notice things. Curtis often kept certain plots loosely filled, and some headstones never arrived. He waited until the mourners were gone before tamping down the soil. At night, he would disappear with a lantern and return smelling of lye and old wood. I never asked questions. Not then. But one evening, as we sat on overturned crates near the tool shed, he lit his pipe and asked me if I wanted to earn more than a shilling. That was the night I met Dr. Hulbert. He didn't look like the others I had heard about in whispers, those who bought bodies under cover of night, with scarves over their faces and false names on their lips. Dr. Hulbert wore a clean black coat, carried a silver pocket watch, and spoke like a man ordering fine meat from a butcher. "I need a body," he said plainly, "fresh, within 48 hours. Female, if possible. No decay, no disfigurement." He handed me a leather pouch. Inside were 4 sovereigns, more money than I had seen in 2 years. "You don't need to know why," he added, "and I don't care where it comes from. But if she's fresh and intact, I'll double the fee next time." I told myself it would be just once. One grave. One night. Her name was Ruth Delaney. She had been a cook's assistant in Holborn, dead of smoke inhalation after a kitchen fire. No one claimed her, and the city buried her in a pauper's grave the next morning. Curtis picked the lock on the iron gate. I brought the tools. The earth was still loose. I hadn't expected the sound the coffin made when we opened it. A low, wet crack, like something was holding her in place and did not want to let go. She looked almost asleep. Her cheeks were full, her eyes closed, her hands still loosely holding the frayed string of her apron. There were soot marks on her sleeves, but her skin was unburned. We wrapped her in burlap and carried her through the shadows. Dr. Halberd accepted the body without question. He didn't unwrap the sack. He simply lifted it once, nodded, and handed me another pouch. "You've got good instincts," he said. "I could use a regular man." I told myself I would never do it again, but I did not return the money. It should have ended with Ruth Delaney. But money doesn't go far in London. Not when you sleep under stairs and eat whatever hasn't yet turned green. The silver was gone within a week, spent on bread, coal, and a coat that didn't quite fit. By the 8th day, I was back at the cemetery, hands cold and stomach hollow, wondering if I had imagined it all. I hadn't. Dr. Halberd returned, as promised. He arrived just after dusk, carriage wheels silent over the gravel. He stepped down without help, his gloves spotless despite the rising damp. "This time," he said, "I need her younger. 18 or under, no older. I'll triple the rate." I nodded, as if this was something men discussed over supper. Curtis didn't speak. He lit his lantern, pulled on his coat, and led me between the rows of graves like we were choosing apples in an orchard. "This one just came in," he muttered, pointing to a crooked wooden cross near the back. "No visitors. No name but L.C. on the record." We worked quickly. I didn't ask what the letters stood for. The coffin was thinner than the last. Lighter. The lid splintered when we pried it open. Inside was a girl with dark hair, a bruised cheek, and a broken shoe still dangling from one foot. Her dress was mended but clean. I noticed the stitching, neat but done by hand. She must have sewn it herself. Her hands were folded around a scrap of ribbon. Curtis looked at me once, then away. We wrapped her in canvas and tied it shut. I carried her this time. She was too light, like she had never really filled her body. Dr. Halberd was waiting by the carriage. He examined the sack with careful hands, pressing once at the side, as if judging a piece of meat. "She'll do," he said. He handed me a small wooden box, heavier than it looked. Inside were sovereigns, carefully stacked in a row of velvet-lined slots. I didn't count them until I got home. 14. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of the stairwell I called home, staring at my hands. They looked older than they had a month before. The skin was cracked along the knuckles. Black soil had settled deep beneath the nails, and no amount of scrubbing would lift it. I dreamed of the girl with the broken shoe. In the dream, she was sitting upright in the coffin, gently tying the ribbon in her hair. She turned toward me with an expression I couldn't read. Pity, perhaps, or accusation. I woke with a start, sweating through my clothes. I swore to myself that this would be the last time, the final body. No more names, no more sacks, no more graves that opened too easily. But the next morning, I passed the public hospital near Bishopsgate and saw a delivery cart out back. They were unloading a sack onto a gurney. It was tied with ribbon. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Dr. Halberd again. They were quiet weeks, but they were not peaceful. Guilt has a way of seeping into everything, into your food, into your sleep, into the way you startle when a carriage clatters too close behind you. I returned to the cemetery and resumed digging graves with old Curtis, but I avoided the night work. I told him my back had gone soft, or that the chill made my hands seize. He never questioned me. Perhaps he was glad to be rid of me. But I could still feel the weight of that second girl, wrapped in canvas, her broken shoe swinging gently with each step. Then, one damp Tuesday night, I found a folded note slipped beneath the loose brick by the iron gate, a place Curtis and I used to hide tobacco. "Urgent, private entrance, same arrangement. Ask for Mr. Dillingham." There was no name at the bottom, but the slanted handwriting was unmistakably Dr. Halberd's. The address was near the back of St. Bartholomew's Hospital, just off Giltspur Street. I had been there once before as a coal runner, when I was much younger. The building was a cold, squatting shape in the fog, with tall windows barred against intrusion. Even from the outside, it smelled of chemicals and boiled cloth. A man in a blood-spattered smock waited at the side entrance. He said nothing, only nodded once and opened the door, motioning me in. The corridor beyond was dim, lit by flickering gas lamps that cast shifting shadows on the pale green tiles. I followed him in silence, counting each of the narrow stairs as we descended 2 full flights into what must have once been the storage cellars. At the end of the hallway, the man knocked twice on a heavy wooden door. A voice answered from within, calm, precise. "Bring him." The door creaked open, and a chill struck me the moment I stepped through. The room was lined with stone, and a sloped floor led to a drain in the center. A steel slab stood beneath a swinging lamp, its surface glistening faintly in the light. Dr. Halberd stood beside it, sleeves rolled past the elbow, hands already gloved. He did not look up when he spoke. "You're early," he said. "That's good. I prefer to begin when the nerves are still warm." I stepped closer, and that was when I saw her. She was not wrapped in burlap. There was no sack. There was nothing hiding the body this time. Her skin was pale and blue-tinged, her chest exposed, her hands tied with wire at the wrists. One of her eyes had been stitched shut, but the other had torn free of its thread and stared upward, blank and unblinking. "I didn't bring this one," I said, barely recognizing my own voice. "No," Dr. Halberd replied evenly. "She was brought in this morning. A river girl. Drowned. We're doing the city a favor." Then he handed me a cloth and pointed to the other end of the table. "Lift her," he said, "and hold steady. You've done worse." The heart came out in one piece. Dr. Halberd lifted it with surgical grace, cradling it in gloved hands, as if it were something rare and delicate. A few drops of dark blood fell onto the tile and slowly trailed toward the drain at the center of the floor. He examined it silently for a moment before placing it in a metal basin beside the slab. "Perfect structure," he murmured. "No scarring. No deformation." I stood at the opposite side of the table, still holding the lamp. My hands had started to shake, though I tried to hide it. The girl on the slab looked smaller now that her chest was open. Her ribs curved outward, like broken wings, and beneath them, something pale had caught the edge of the forceps. Dr. Halberd reached in again. This time, instead of another organ, he pulled out a cloth, soft and crumpled, soaked red at one end. He turned it over in his hand and revealed a set of embroidered initials stitched into one corner. LCD. I felt my mouth go dry. Those were the same letters that had marked the wooden cross we dug up weeks ago. The girl with the broken shoe, the one with the soot-stained apron, and the ribbon in her hand. He didn't seem to notice my reaction. "Curious," he said. "I thought she was the earlier one. But that was Ruth. This is the second girl." His fingers traced the stitching. "She must have swallowed it," he said softly, more to himself than to me. "Or pressed it against the wound as she died." I stepped back. My stomach turned. "You said she drowned," I managed. Dr. Halberd finally looked up at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I said what the record said," he replied. "But records lie. People lie. The body, though." He smiled faintly. "The body always tells the truth." He turned away and began preparing another tray, this one with smaller instruments and a magnifying lens. "Will you stay?" he asked without turning. "You've shown promise. There's more to this than digging." I didn't answer. I placed the lamp gently on the edge of the basin and stepped back toward the door. He didn't stop me. Outside, the alley was slick with rain. The air tasted of smoke and iron. I walked without direction, letting the night take me wherever it pleased. When I reached the cemetery gate, the fog had thickened, and the world felt smaller somehow, quieter, like it was waiting for me to speak. I didn't go inside. I sat down on the wet stone steps and opened the small wooden box he had given me that evening. Inside, instead of coins, there was a folded note. One more. She must be fresh. The cleaner the cut, the better the learning. I closed the box and left it there, in the rain. I don't dig anymore. Not graves, not questions, but some nights, when the wind hits the streets just right, I swear I can still hear her, scratching from beneath the earth.